started racism? Yo, facts, I always want to know who started racism, man.
Hey, so you know how pretty much all of the Primarchs kind of have a certain duty? Like, we all know Gilliman is the god of taxes, we all know that Magnus is the god of magic, and so on and so forth. But given all the crazy alien species in the galaxy, wouldn't it kind of make sense that the Emperor would have dedicated Primarchs to dealing with that problem? And when I say dedicated, I mean dedicated in the same way how the Blood Angels are dedicated to melee, but when I say dedicated, I mean it's more like they'll specialty. They can still, you know, do ranged combat, just their specialty. So what are the specialty Primarchs when it comes to dealing with aliens? And there are 3 Primarchs that are specifically made to fight certain types of aliens or creatures. And the Primarchs in question, and this first one is going to shock a lot of people. Well, this first one might anger a lot of people. Logar Aurelian is meant to fight chaos. Poltarabo is meant to fight Necrons. And Corvus Corax and Jagakai Khan are meant to fight Eldar. Meanwhile, for not specific duties, but still duties meant to hunt a certain type of organism, Leman Russ is meant to hunt Primarchs and other Space Marines. And Lionel Johnson is meant to hunt just random eldritch aliens. And just to kind of exterminate in general. Now let me explain the one that I'm certain got me a lot of eye rolls. Logar is meant to fight chaos. Now, the reason I say this is because there's really the 2 best ways to fight chaos is to be an R/atheism level atheist, like a Fabius Bile-esque individual who will straight up is so atheist, is so racist and hateful of the idea of gods that it causes demons to have physical pain and causes the warp to bend around you. That is very hard for the average guy to have. Most people are either neutral or very devout. Very few people are that passionate about atheism. That's why the better way to fight chaos in 40k is faith. The majority of people aren't going to be super anti-religious, but the majority of people, or at least a lot of them, can be very, very religious. And look at Logar's Electitio Divinitatum, pretty much the Emperor's Bible, which he did end up getting punished for. But this book is the foundation, is the only reason the imperial cult then morphed into the ecclesiarchy. And on top of that, planets that the world bearers visited have never once turned traitor and have never once fallen to chaos or had any chaos cults. The power of faith is a far better tool against chaos. We've seen this time and time again. The reason why most Space Marines don't fall to chaos is because they are constantly psycho-indoctrinated to not fall to chaos and actually know what it is. And most Inquisitors are either very religious or aren't that religious, but also, again, know what chaos is. This is why you can have a lot of atheist Space Marines not falling to chaos, but a lot of atheist citizens will easily fall to chaos because they don't know what it is, they don't know how to fight against it, and they don't have anything for their faith to feed off of. Again, as I've talked earlier with the raw dogging the warp theory, the reason why orcs can basically F1 with chaos so much, and the reason why Eldar can to a lesser extent because their gods are no longer around, is because they have the gods sucking off their psychic residue. But because there is no god like that for humanity, all that psychic residue feeds the chaos gods. Now, when Logar wrote the Electitio Divinitatum, there was no god of humanity. Now there is kind of like a half-baked god being the Emperor. So even then, back during the Horus Heresy and everything, when the Emperor was still kicking, there was no god who was somewhat sucking off human residue. Although the sucking off human residue only happens when they're actively worshipping them, but that's better than nothing. No, the reason this is because the Electitio Divinitatum is pretty much the Space Bible. It's pretty much, you have to be very cleanly, you have to be very kind, you can't lie, you can't become, super degenerate. This, even just the basic living principles of the Electitio Divinitatem help starve chaos, even though it doesn't direct it towards any god. Yet, later on, when the emperor would pretty much become kind of like a half-god, when you're worshipping him, all that residue is going to him, and when you're not worshipping him, you're still not taking part in any acts that the gods really, really enjoy. Yes, you still get sick. Yes, you still sometimes get angry, and that does feed the gods. But simply living by the Electitio Divinitatem helps the gods not get a grip on you in the first place. And also, because it does somewhat speak of, demons and dark entities, even though you don't know what chaos is, you still have a general idea that, hey, it's bad. It's kind of like how, Christians have a vague understanding of what the devil is. It's kind of that idea. So, hey, don't go near that. That's gross. Only the emperor. And that's actually why most chaos entities have to kind of trick loyal citizens into thinking, hey, I'm the emperor, which is very hard to do. If it wasn't for Logar's Electitio Divinitatem, I do not believe the Imperium would be around. Having all these hyper-loyal, hyper-religious guardsmen, for example, or even citizens, makes it a lot harder for chaos to dig in. Makes it a lot harder for chaos to uproot society. It's not impossible, of course, but think about how fast it would happen if it wasn't for the Electitio Divinitatem. Now, you can't fight chaos. Chaos is a concept. Yeah, you can, fight the big demon, but the big demon isn't the big issue. It's the corruption, which, again, is harder when all the people are hyper-religious. So, Logar was not meant to fight chaos directly. He was meant to fight it on a more spiritual level. Not using psycho powers, not using physical powers, using worlds. And whether if you like it or not, his worlds are the only reason chaos hasn't engulfed the galaxy, at least in my opinion. Not to mention just the general way he could rally people. His Legion, as I was talking about the other way to fight chaos, pretty much atheism the Legion, and just a few minutes he was able to convince them using his godlike charisma and poetry to get them to become hyper zealots for the Emperor. And that's why you have Imperial citizens who will doubt their faith for a nanosecond and will burn themselves as a punishment, because Logar is literally as strong as Vulcan is, as powerful as Magnus is, as good at Gilliman is at governance. Logar is that strong with his words and his poetry. And Logar is the best fit to fight chaos because, again, I'm sorry I sound like Vulcan. We can't fight directly. You have to fight it by convincing normal humans not to join it and to repel it and to starve it. And even without a god, the Electitio Divinitatem helps get humans away from any actions that would go on a slippery slope to chaos worship. And also, the whole reason the Emperor is this empowered, the whole reason the Emperor of all people was able to burn Norgal, the whole reason the Emperor had the power to revive Gilliman, the whole reason the Legion of the Damned exists, the whole reason Saint Celestine exists, is because of Logar. All of this positive warp energy is only because of the Electitio Divinitatem. I know I didn't explain this one the most, but the best way to fight chaos, pretty much having your own god of law and order, only exists because of Logar. And this is actually why I do believe the Emperor planned the heresy or made some sort of deal with chaos in order to have the Primarch souls, because he knew that the only way to get half of the Primarchs to fall to chaos was with Logar and Horus. Now, I truly do believe that he intended both of these men to fall. There's no way on God's green earth that he didn't know Horus and Logar were going to fall. And the reason I believe this, look at Corvus. Look at Corvus for a second. I believe that... Now, we see Corvus is pretty much spawn-killing Logar. Corvus is a beast who's spawn-camping Logar, and the only reason... I mean, Logar's had 10,000 years to light the demonic Electitio Divinitatem, and he has witnessed it. He just can't get it out there because Corvus is spawn-camping him. I believe it was supposed to be Conrad spawn-camping him, but because Conrad was all schizo, the reason the Emperor was so kind to Corvus and actually told Corvus what chaos was is because he knew that if he tells Corvus what chaos is, and he's so kind to Corvus, that Corvus won't fall to chaos. If the Emperor had given this treatment to all the other Primarchs, telling them what chaos is, loving them, and, not being a massive dickhead to Logar and burning down his city, if he treated everyone how he treated Corvus, with the same kindness and love how a child needs, then none of them would have fallen to chaos. I believe he made a deal with Chaos Entity, whether if it was the gods or I actually believe it was Vashtor, but I'll get into that in a later video, that for half of the Primarchs to fall to chaos, or at least two-tone Tradal, because not all the Tradal Primordics fell to Chaos necessarily. And we can also see this with Subject 11. I believe the reason why we have a being in the Dark Cells called Subject 11 is because that's the 11th Primordic. And when Primordic 2 died in the One Dung Xenocide, he pretty much went up to one of the Primordics and kind of stuffed them under the power, so that way there could be an even number of Primordics, so half of them could fall to Chaos. And I believe that one of the things that was dealt with is that they need Logar to fall to Chaos. I believe that was one of the deals because of how faithful and how strong Logar's worlds are. Logar is the strongest Primarch. Yeah, he gets his shit walked by literally all of them in any physical confrontation, but at the end of the day, if it wasn't for Logar, I do not believe the Imperium would be around because of his Electitio Divinitatum. And if it wasn't for Corvus spawn camping him, I believe the Electitio Divinitatum for Hell would have destroyed the Imperium by now. So yes, despite being the first Primarch Heretic, Logar was meant to fight Chaos. Now, Perturabo is a lot simpler. He was meant to fight the Necrons. Simply put, Necrons have Tomb Lords, and Perturabo is the master of siege. But on top of that, Perturabo could produce the most amount of Marines. He was only pulling them from Olympia, but that's because the Iron Warriors never had a really big challenge where they were pushed to their knees. Even their highest challenge, fighting the Hood, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, a lot of Iron Warriors died, but not nearly enough to weaken the Legion too strong. Well, they did weaken the Legion, but the Legion was able to bounce back almost instantly. If there was ever a war where the Iron Warriors were on the brink, Perturabo could simply go to a bunch of hive cities, set up more industrial factories to make space marine equipment, and start taking children from hive cities instead of just Olympia. I'm actually been meaning to make a video. I've been delaying it because I hate math, on counting how many Iron Warriors did Perturabo actually take out of Olympia. Because over 200 years, he continuously bled Olympia's populations, taking out of 10 men, 9 of them, and having the others just, impregnate dozens of women in order to keep the populations up, so he could then do it again. If he simply took from hive cities and industrialized hive cities, because the majority of the Iron Warrior supply lines came from Olympia, not Forge Worlds, or from hive cities where there was massive amounts of manpower. And again, there wasn't a whole lot of manpower on Olympia to get from the get-go. So if Perturabo had had either industrialized hive cities and also taken the children from hive cities, or also just worked with the Mechanicum, which he really hated the Mechanicum, but even if he had to work with the Mechanicum, he probably would, or if he just began to industrialize more hive cities. That's actually I actually think Perturabo, to an extent, is a failure. I believe Perturabo was supposed to have a Gilliman-esque empire, massive industrial plants on hive cities, pumping out loads of equipment. Because also, another thing to know is Olympia wasn't a very industrial planet, and despite that, he was the only guy who built a Gloriana-class warship on his own. Theros didn't do that. Vulcan didn't. I actually do believe Vulcan did that. But he was the only, out of 2 Primarchs, he was the only one to completely build his ship on his planet. Even Vulcan had some help from the Mechanicum, but Perturabo did it all on his own. If he had a realm of 500 worlds, Jesus Christ, the Iron Warriors could have swelled to millions of Marines. And these millions of Marines could have been easily grinded up against a Necron Tomb World. Because it doesn't matter how good the Ultramarines are, it doesn't matter how big the Ultramarines are, you're still going to take thousands, hundreds of thousands of casualties going up against a really big Tomb Lord. Not all Tomb Lords. A lot of Tomb Lords, any Legion could just smack down. But let's say if it was like the Silent King's Tomb Lord. Good God, it's quite possible that hundreds of thousands of Marines will die taking that Tomb Lord. And the Iron Warriors could take those types of losses if given the time to grow. And even if not time to grow, these guys can just replace themselves so much. They have 150,000 Marines. You kill 100,000 in a few years, they'll still at 150,000 because they can just replace them so fast. And that was only using Olympia. If Perturabo was pretty much nerfing himself, if he went the Gilliman route, he could have had a legion of millions of Marines with dozens of Gloriana-class battleships, able to easily wipe out any Necron Tomb Lord, even the Silent Kings. I know the Silent King didn't have a Tomb Lord per se, but like those super massive Tomb Lords, except the Tomb Lord that's in a sun. Perturabo ain't touching that one. And also, as a redundancy, Logar Dorn is pretty much just Diet Coke Perturabo when it comes to taking on Tomb Lord. He'd be very good at it. He's very good at sieging, very good at, replacing his men, but not as good at sieging and not as good at replacing his men. So, he is just objectively worse at taking Tomb Worlds. Hypothetically, he will just be worse at taking Tomb Worlds than my Iron Boy. Because my Iron Boy can just take way more losses and recover way quicker. Also, yes, Fearless Manus does use similar tactics to Portolabo, as you can see in my, Primarch Circle Theory. But, by the way, in case you're wondering, I do have a previous video talking about Primarch Circle Theory. This is the theory right here. Like, for example, Sanguinius is so similar to Conrad, but Sanguinius is also so similar to Angron, and this also explains what would the Lost Primarch somewhat be like. Because, I just look at it for a second. Obviously, Portolabo and Dawn are very similar. Portolabo and Pharos are similar. Pharos and Vulcan, but Dawn was also similar to Gilliman. Gilliman similar to Fulgrim. Fulgrim similar to, and so on and so forth. But, Pharos, again, does use somewhat similar tactics to Portolabo, except his warriors are a lot stronger than Portolabo's, a lot harder to kill, and they have a lot more firepower, but there's way fewer of them, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. A lot of Necron technology, it doesn't matter how strong you are, how durable you are, it's a one-hit kill. So that's why Portolabo having there's a certain quality in quantity. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like throwing T-34s at higher quality German tanks. Not to mention, Portolabo is the only guy who can straight up look at technology, be like, oh yes, this is how to make it better. And Necron technology is literally just human technology, but way more advanced. So I believe not only was Portolabo destined to pretty much be a cracker of Necron Tomb Worlds before they even awaken, or after they awaken, he's still gonna crack them, but, his main thing would be after the Great Crusade, which is a video I'm actually working on. By the way, what would happen if the Great Crusade didn't happen? It would be pretty much Portolabo going Tomb World, cracking it open. Well, Portolabo, all the Primarchs would be doing that, except Portolabo would definitely have the highest count of dead Tomb Worlds, and would be sent to go after the strongest Tomb Worlds. And also, all the crazy science crap inside, he could reverse engineer and give to his Iron Warriors so they could crack Tomb Worlds even more effectively. And after a while, reverse engineer Necron technology, which is way more advanced than anything the Mechanicum has. And this is before the Mechanicum became super deep-rooted. Obviously, in 30k, they were deeply rooted, but now in 40k, they're way more deep-rooted. I think the Emperor wanted Portolabo to eventually kind of replace the Mechanicum, because obviously the Iron Warriors and Portolabo themselves aren't going to do it. The Mechanicum, there just wouldn't be enough of them no matter how many there are. But they could teach normal humans how to operate this Necron human-esque technology without all the religious ceremonies. Pretty much taking mankind back to an actual superpower and getting us away from techno-shamans. So Portolabo, more like Go-to-Wabo. He was supposed to crack and get rid of all of the most dangerous aliens, because the Necrons are the most dangerous aliens, because of how advanced they are. And he was supposed to take their technology and combine it with human technology. Go-to-Wabo is number one. Now, next up is a bit more confusing and isn't the best on my circle theory. As you see here, with the best Primarchs to fight Chaos being, Logar, Gilliman, and Fulgrim. If Fulgrim okay, speaking of, because I just said Fulgrim, even though Fulgrim fell to Chaos, instantaneously. Let me justify myself. Let me justify myself for a second. Kegarak, the Eldar God of Laughter, swapped Fulgrim and Jagakai Khan's pods, so they now chose planets. It's my headcanon that if that hadn't happened, Fulgrim would have had a lot of the Khan's good qualities of being patient, of being one with yourself, not having a massive ego, but also not being super insecure like Fulgrim was, and just would have been much more balanced. But still would have been a total simp for the Emperor and simp for the perfect human form. So I believe if he landed on the Khan's planet, he would have had all of the Khan's good graces except hyper-loyalty to the Emperor, and would have hated anything that wasn't the perfect human form. So would have been really gung-ho about exterminating anything touched by Chaos. And Gilliman is pretty much incorruptible and is the only reason Chaos hasn't consumed the galaxy. Not to mention we have this section here, Portolabo, Pharos, and of course Dawn that are the best at, killing Necrons. Now obviously, all the Primarchs here, if loyal, would be great at fighting Chaos and would be great against fighting Necrons. except some of them are clearly better at it than others. And we have Kagekai Khan, I can never pronounce that correctly, and Emo Boldman. And I believe Emo Boldman was destined to fight Craft Warders and Dark Eldoi. And Dark Eldoi, obviously very sneaky, very stealthy, have a lot of, you know, they'll just kind of overwhelm you with the darkness, which you're not overwhelming Corvus and the Waving Guard with the darkness, because a lot of them straight up have psychic powers where they can pretty much turn invisible, and no one, including the Dark Eldoi, is beating them in that. And, of course, Corvus, who you're not catching him in the dark. And, of course, Kagekai Khan, who is very good fighting Dark Eldoi. I mean, bro literally dived into the webway just to kill more Eldoi. But, again, I believe if he would landed on Fulgrim's planet, he wouldn't be as patient and chill, and he would be way more gung-ho about killing Dark Eldoi. He would have been much more like the real Kangas Khan, you know, just wanting to genocide everything. And that's also why I believe Kegoak swapped them around, because Kegoak could see how many Eldoi were going to be killed by the Khan, and I believe the Khan one is also somewhat destined to fall to Slaanesh. I believe the Khan was supposed to pick up the Leo Blade and was supposed to follow Slaanesh, and would have been a great Slaanesh champion, because instead of just focusing on humanity, like how Fulgrim does, he would have been focusing a little bit on humanity, but mostly on the Eldoi, which is what Slaanesh wants. So the Khan was supposed to be Slaanesh's champion, but if not, was supposed to fight Eldoi. And, I mean, we literally see a non-corrupted Khan really gung-ho about fighting Eldoi, especially Dark Eldoi. So, Khan, Alpharius, Emo Boldman, Schizophrenic Batman were meant to fight Eldoi. We can also see, another reason why these guys are meant to fight Eldoi is their legions have some very, very, very powerful cycles. And the reason I say that is because the Craftful Eldoi have cycles, so sometimes you need to fight fire with fire, and the Dark Eldoi can't use cycles, so they're kind of weak against cycles because they can't use them. Not to mention, big, heavy, you know, Terminator armor and big, heavy armor, like the Iron Hands, Iron Warriors, and Imperial Fists. It's just kind of garbage against Eldoi. I mean, first of all, most of these guys would be too slow to even hit the Eldoi, and on top of that, their weapons, although powerful, again, would just be too slow to hit the Eldoi, and Eldoi weapons are strong enough to... Eldoi are kind of like glass cannons. Their weapons are easily strong enough to punch through most Terminator armor, not all of it, but a lot of it. Like, I know they have a flame-based weapon that doesn't even shoot flames. It just kind of makes molecules just vibrate really fast, which is how heat is generated. And so, Terminator armor to that is literally just a big tin can. It doesn't really matter if it's light armor or heavy armor. The only thing is, with light armor, you can get to them and shoot them faster, so they can't do that. You get what I'm talking about, right? And all four of these legions use very light stuff, and are all big fans of very skirmishy warfare, fighting the fire with fire, because the Eldoi use very light stuff and are big fans of skirmishy warfare. So these four, especially the Khan, and especially Corvus, are designed to kill Eldoi. Particularly Dark Eldoi, but if the Craft Orders are acting up, then they can catch a hand too. And, of course, Leman Russ is specifically meant to hunt other Primarchs. And I did do an entire video pretty much clowning on Leman's fight record, but all in all, Leman is an absolute monster when it comes to fighting other Primarchs. He only lost to the Lion because he tried to stop the fighting. He's also very good at understanding people's emotions and just getting people to chill out. Unless they're cycles, he's very racist cycles. But he tried to chill out and just try to goof. But he did get very upset at the Lion and did punch him. But he was the first to be like, all right, man, let's just chill. After 3 days of fighting, no less. 3 days of fighting what is quite possibly the greatest Primarch duelist. And he was like, oh, come on, man, it's just a goof. Let's just chill out. And then the Lion just kind of cheap shot, sucker punched him. So he at least tied with the Lion, because the only reason it happened is because he let his guard down and tried to end the fight. He did defeat Magnus, which, don't get me wrong, he only defeated Magnus because Magnus was at super low power. Half his power was being drained by the Sisters of Silence, and all of his attacks were doing like half damage because of Leman's special anti-psycho armor. And Leman is literally the Primarch meant to fight psychic beings, so although he did defeat Magnus, Magnus was incredibly nerfed. Although what I will say is if the majority of Primarchs like Gilliman, even Dorn, Angron were to fight Magnus, they would be cooked immediately, even with the anti-psycho armor. Not to mention, It's heavily implied that he had something to do with the deaths of at least one of the lost Primarchs. And, of course, Lionel Johnson, he's just kind of, well, he's A, an exterminator, and B, the thing you throw out when you just need a certain hyper-deadly, hyper-eldritch alien waste destroyed. Like, I don't think any of the other Primarchs could have defeated the Crave. Other Primarchs could have defeated the One Done, but it was incredibly hard. You needed just overkill, and that's what the Lion's good at. So, Lion just kind of a jack-of-all-traits killer, I guess. You know, exterminator. But I would say, if there was a specific alien race he was meant to exterminate, it was the Crave. Although, much more jack-of-all-trades. Now, do keep in mind, obviously, Dawn, I don't believe Dawn was made to kill Necrons. It's just that because he's so similar to Portawabo, he was made to kill Necrons. Same thing with Phaelus. And even then, if you were to throw Logar or Lehman or most Primarchs at a Necron Tomb World with their full legions, they're cracking that baby wide open. It's just the fact that these guys are specialists and would be way better at it than most other people. You know what I'm talking about? Like, again, all Loyal's Primarchs do exterminating chaos, but I do believe Logar's power of speech and poetry would help a lot more than anyone else's brute force. And obviously, you know, Gilliman, Logar, Horus, Sanguinius, all these guys would be good at fighting Eldar, especially Dark Eldar, but these guys right here, especially Emo Bold Man and Big Mongolian Man, would be way better at fighting Eldar than most others. I'm sorry I didn't explain this the best. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you kind of get what I'm talking about. Also, please watch my Primarch Circle Theory video if you want each Primarch's relationship with their neighbor Primarch's relationship and why they're so similar to be explained. Please watch this video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. Could I please beg you, my lord, for a like and a subscribe and maybe a nice comment?
And before I go, there was one thing I have to mention. I know there's kind of an elephant in the room with, you know, Vulcan being designed to, you know, exterminate orcs. But I actually don't believe that's his purpose. I believe that what kind of throws my, you know, theory into the gutter a little bit is Vulcan, because I believe he is meant to kill Eldar. Particularly, I believe he is meant to kill their young before they're able to turn into, you know, a big threat. Okay, goodbye. I'm so sorry.